Hello, my name is Blake Martin,
And I am Arthur Lin.
and we will be presenting the Energy and Atmosphere Credit 7, Green Power and Carbon Offsets.
For the intent, here are some of the relevant terms in this section that are listed on the slide. Feel free to pause the video and read over all the definitions before progressing onto the next slides.
The intent behind this credit is to encourage the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions through the use of grid-source renewable energy technologies and carbon mitigation projects. Why should this be a point of emphasis for the LEED Administration Board? LEED desires to encourage energy generator and utility companies to invest and develop new clean sources of energy for their clients. Awarding the decrease of building and construction carbon emissions addresses the climate change and promotes a new market demand for renewable energy.
Green power and carbon offsets apply to new construction, core and shell, schools, retail, data centers, warehouse distribution centers, hospitality, and healthcare. Each of these categories can earn your project 1 to 2 points based on the percentage of total energy addressed in the project.
Prior to considering this credit, there are a few prerequisite activities that must be accomplished. The contractor must engage in a contract for qualified resources for a minimum of 5 years to be delivered at least annually. In addition, the contract must specify and provide the provision of at least 50% of the project's energy from green power, carbon offsets, or RECs to achieve 1 point. 2 points can be achieved for projects that address 100% of the total energy from the same power resources.
In completing the requirements for this credit, green power and renewable energy certificates must be Green E certified or equivalent in status. Additionally, carbon offsets can be used to reduce Scope 1 or 2 emissions and also be Green E certified. Lastly, U.S. projects must have the emission reduction projects within the U.S., whereas projects should calculate annual energy consumption using the EA prerequisite minimum energy performance, or U.S. Department of Energy's Commercial Buildings Energy Consumption Survey Database, also known as CBECS. For core and shell projects, energy is defined by the Building Owners and Managers Association standards.
The following is a list of guidance steps that can assist in a project achieving the green power and carbon offsets credit. Step 1, investigate available options. Step 2, conduct cost-benefit analysis. Step 3, set project goal for green power and carbon offsets. Step 4, calculate energy use associated with Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions categories. Step 5, calculate required green power and carbon offsets. Step 6, obtain proposals for Green E certified products or equivalent and make your purchase.
For step 1, we will consider the project's location and energy type in determining cost. Some things to consider when purchasing are: green power and renewable energy certificates must be Green E certified and can only be used towards annual electricity energy use. Green power and RACs can be provided by local utility providers. For carbon offsets must also be a Green E climate certified, but unlike green power, they can be used for electric and non-electric energy uses.
Step 2, conduct a cost-benefit analysis of the energy resources used for this project. The decisions made must be based on the understanding of both environmental and economic benefits for all options. For example, not all carbon offsets are the same and can be applied to different types of projects. Some may be associated with land use development, while others with energy efficiency projects. Prior to making a final decision, understand the impacts in both the short and long term. Make sure that the purchases you make correspond correctly with the project's environmental goals and values.
Step 3. Set project goal for green power or carbon offsets. Because the offset goal must be made for consecutive years to meet the requirement, review the credit points and make sure what point value the project is aiming for.
Step 4. Calculate the energy use associated with Scope 1 and 2 of the emissions categories. You must determine the annual total grid-generated energy based on the option selected in the EA Minimum Energy Performance Prereq. Recall the two options that projects could follow to meet these EA requirements. Option 1 calls for projects that use computer model simulations, while options 2 and 3 calls for a project to follow a prescriptive pathway. For option 1, you must use the entire building simulation results to determine total annual energy use. You must include annual electricity and non-electricity energy uses. You can exclude site-generated electricity from the total consumption amounts and include as non-electric energy any steam and chilled water purchases from the utility provider. For option 2, you must use U.S. Department of Energy's Commercial Buildings Energy Consumption Survey to estimate the annual energy usage. You must exclude any site-generated electricity from annual usage and use the total building area and corresponding energy use intensity from the CBECS database. Note that net zero buildings are also eligible to achieve 2 points under this credit without the purchase of additional renewable energy sources.
Step 5. Calculate required green power and carbon offsets. For this step, sum up all the electricity and non-electricity totals to determine how much carbon offset and green power needs to be purchased. Some things to consider in this calculation include 1. Green power or REC projects must convert their grid-generated electricity use to megawatt hours. 2. Carbon offset projects must convert grid-generated electricity use to metric tons of CO2 equivalent. 3. Non-electricity energy must be converted to metric tons of CO2 equivalent. 4. Any combination of green power or REC or carbon offsets can be used to meet 50% or 100% thresholds.
Step 6. Obtain proposals for your desired Green E certified products and make your purchase. Reach out to numerous providers to weigh the options of the products they offer. Verify that the products they are offering are certified as specified in the credit requirements. Remember that the vendor must specify not only the purchasing goals, including the duration, but also provide confirmation on the date on which the resources came online. Qualified resources that came online prior to January 1st of 2005 are invalid. There are additional requirements on where these resources can be purchased. If local resources are unavailable for projects outside the U.S. borders, the credit can still be achieved for purchasing the Green E certified products from the U.S. Equations 1 through 5 provided can be used to calculate total qualifying energy use, percentages of purchased energy or offsets, converting units to metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, and project greenhouse gas emissions.
Projects not using Green E certified products must demonstrate the alternative's equivalency to quality standards established for Green E energy and climate products. Make sure the accounting process and standards address everything as specified by the credit requirements to achieve valid equivalency.
Proper and organized documentation is recommended for all LEED certification credits. The required documentation for the green power and carbon offsets credit include electricity and non-electricity energy use calculations, calculations showing required REC, green power, or carbon offsets for the targeted percentage threshold, a purchase contract or letter of commitment showing the REC, green power, or carbon offsets for the project goal, and green equivalency documentation for all products not pre-certified. Make sure all documentation is accounted for prior to submission to avoid any additional fees.
In obtaining the green power and carbon offsets credit, there are three other related credit tips that you should also consider. These are 1. The EA prerequisite minimum energy performance, which also uses the amount of proposed energy use to calculate green power that will be contracted. 2. The EA optimized energy performance, which measures total annual energy use to implement energy efficiency. 3. The EA renewable energy production, which uses renewable energy production to reduce total energy use in the project.
The following is a few examples of questions that could potentially be seen on the LEED GA regarding green power and carbon emissions. Example 1. Which of the following would not be included in local zoning or local code requirements? The answer is green power. Example 2. What qualifies for the green power credit for LEED projects? The answer is RECs, which is your renewable energy certificates. Good luck studying for the Energy and Atmosphere quiz. If you have any questions regarding Credit 7, green power, and carbon offsets, feel free to reach out to us or the TAs. Thanks.